What is enlightenment? You know, in the old days, let's say, I don't know, early 70s, when we had just been introduced to that little transcendental meditation guru. But this little sticky little voice like this. What's he called? Yogi Mahesh. So the Beatles hung around me for a while, right? And people got into meditation, and then more and more people were speaking about this notion of enlightenment. And in the West, we think that only these gurus that wear sheets and sandals can be enlightened because they've meditated for 4,000 years. And very, very few people in the West have any idea what enlightenment actually is. But some of you will listen to many spiritual videos and lectures, discussions and all that sort of thing. And from time to time you would come upon somebody speaking about their enlightening experience. Now, I've listened to many of them. I've listened to Sadhguru, to Mooji, to Osho, to Krishnamurti, then this other Indian gurus which I can't really pronounce their names. But basically what they say is, as soon as you experience the oneness, that you are at one with God or the cosmos, and you are not the body, that's enlightenment. It really is as simple as that. And so that would have been a very big deal prior to the proliferation of psychedelics. But with powerful psychedelic experiences, we can get this all one feeling in an instant. And many of you who have taken psychedelics would have had it many times. And so with the prolific amount of psychedelics that I've engaged with in my life, then I've experienced this oneness and this ego dissociation, and I'm not the body. And in DMT trips, I was told that I am the cosmos and there's nothing else except me, meaning consciousness, I suppose. It's just consciousness. And so more and more these days, in so many arenas, people are broaching spiritual questions, and they've come to an impasse in science, and they need another avenue. So now they are starting to include the supernatural, spiritual and phenomenological, and of course they're really, really trying to break their balls to work out what consciousness is. But they're nowhere near discovering what that is now than they were 2,000 years ago. But this whole thing about enlightenment, people, as soon as you have this notion that you are not the ego, you are not the body, i.e. if you have an out-of-body experience. I listened to Krishnamurti, the great, awesome guru, one of the best on the planet. And he only ever had one out-of-body experience in his whole life. I never heard him speaking about any other supernatural experiences. And then Mooji, just one day he was walking out in nature and everything stood still and everything felt pure and he was at one with everything. Yeah, I've had that several times through breathing and exercising outside, but 100 times taking psychedelics. And so once you know that you're not the body, then you're enlightened, people. And it's as simple as that. And it's still quite shocking how many people have the greatest of misunderstandings when it comes to Eastern philosophy and the whole notion of enlightenment and oneness You can get it with meditation. I've had it with meditation, and so I've had it in lots of realms. And it's no big deal to say that we are enlightened, because it doesn't mean that you are all loving and you love the whole of humanity and you would never get angry and you would never say anything mean. That's just a complete load of tosh. It's misconception from the fool that knows nothing about what it is to be enlightened, or at least to be awakened. I've seen the best of these gurus get angry and fed up, completely fed up, when they're addressing the idiot masses and they're trying to get some sort of interaction or some sense out of them, and you just don't see it. You just invariably don't ever see anybody engage in any intellectual, meaningful way whenever these people at these satsangs or something like that. They're just speaking such mundane. But of course, these people that go to the satsangs, they are the lowest of the low, because they are the biggest fools of all, because they're the ones that pay astronomical amounts of money just to sit at the sandals of these gurus. So they evidently haven't been awoken or enlightened in the slightest, because if they had, they would hold on to their money. They really would. And so, I bring this subject up because in one of the videos I put up yesterday from about 7 years ago, I'm broaching this subject. And I said in that video that I was watching an Osho video, and somebody said to Osho what, it was an American reporter, and he was like, if you're an enlightened being, you should know this and you should know that and you should be able to do this, and they think that if you're an enlightened being you should walk on water. That's what these idiots think. And Osho just went, being enlightened simply means that you know the body. Now I could read his mind. He said, now fuck off and die, you fucking tard. You just get tired of these fucking idiots. And so that's it, people. Enlightenment. I'm sure there's lots of enlightened people watching this, because I know, in relation to my viewers, you've had many disturbing experiences in life, and that's what shook you to the core and set you on your course of spiritual awakening or enlightenment. And all the rest of the discoveries that we'll make along the way. If you haven't been shook to your core, then you won't find this path remotely interesting. You'll scoff at it, you'll dismiss it, deny it, throw stones at it. You won't have any mind to engage in it at all, because you are so far flung from being in this state of consciousness. And so I wanted to level that and to ask the question, what do you perceive enlightenment to be? Do you think you are enlightened? When was the occasion when you finally realized that, wow, I think that might be enlightenment, because now I see the world, the cosmos, life, the human being, just entirely different. You just see it in a whole new way that the muggles in the street will never see. And so if that isn't enlightenment, then what do you think it is? Do you think that you've got to sit in a cave and grow lean and just eat like a fistful of rice each day for 50 years before you're enlightened, and then it's all peace and it's all love and you wouldn't say boo to a goose? Because if you think that, you're fools. And these days, you see, look, the world's speeding up and it's getting smaller, and all these mystical things, they're no longer that mystical, to be fair, people. All these esoteric, mystical schools and the secret societies, it's all out. It's all out the bag. It's on the internet.
And everything that's ever been written is on the internet, people. And so there really isn't any mystery to it, to be fair. And I've listened to and read enough of it to realise that all the gobbledygook that they write or wrote, whatever they wrote, mostly was just to deceive or elude people from knowing what they were speaking about. And if you listen to, well, for instance, like the Emerald Tablets. In the Emerald Tablets, Hermes Trismegistus apparently wrote, how to enter into other worlds. Like Rudolf Steiner tells you how to enter into other worlds. You can enter into other worlds. And in the Emerald Tablets, Hermes speaks about leaving the body. And it's very interesting, actually. I think it's tablet number 4 out of the 13. And when I first read that, I went, wow, this dude is talking about astral projection. And so when you have some experience and knowledge and you read these ancient texts, then you read between the lines and the mystery is solved. And there's nothing that they knew 2,000 years ago that isn't knowable today. And I would think more people proportionately have had those experiences in this day and age with the advent of entheogens and the knowledge of how to leave our bodies and all different sorts of things. So, as an aside to what I've just been saying there, some of you may be aware that there's a very curious thing that happens when we have organ transplants. And I think because the information is coming out that it doesn't have to necessarily be an organ. It could be a bone implant or a skin graft or something, because what these scientists are now saying, and it first came out when people who had heart transplants were speaking of finding themselves with new personalities, new hobbies and interests which they never had before. And then some of these people have done some research and discovered who it was that donated their heart or liver, usually the heart in the early stages. They discovered, the reason why I also just took up tennis and love tennis, I'm absolutely obsessed with tennis now, is because the person who donated the heart was a prolific tennis player, a semi-pro or professional or whatever. There's been many stories told now about people receiving kidneys and livers and different sorts of things and experiencing something very similar. So I was watching David Icke video when he's speaking with one of his sons, Jamie, and Jamie is saying there needs to be more research about this, because it might just be that you could get a very malicious, vindictive or hateful person die, which was a donor, and then if you inherit their heart, then you're going to inherit the heart full of hate and very, very negative connotations. And so it's kind of like, well, research should be done now, because we know this, into what the donor was like. Try to gather as much information as possible to see whether they were a good person, whether they had any very, very negative traits to their personalities. Because wouldn't that be a bummer if you inherited somebody else's very, very negative traits that you never had before, and then you end up losing your partner your job, your livelihood, friends, and everybody thinking that you're the biggest asshole since you've had your heart transplant. You should have died. Wow. Isn't that bizarre? So what I'm saying here then, people, is that there really is so much that we don't know about the human being, and we're learning more and more with each passing week about very, very bizarre game-changing things. Like in recent times I was speaking about my discovery that not many people have an internal dialogue like I do, and how many people see coloured visions in their mind's eye when I don't see nothing at all, just black when I close my eyes and think about something. This is called aphantasia, and apparently I'm one of 5%, but I think because there's so little study being done on this subject, it's more than that, because my daughter was telling me that her fiance is aphantasiac also, and I'm pretty sure the more we ask questions, the more that would be revealed, and I would think it's at least 30%. And then when we have people that don't have an internal dialogue, but they have an internal monologue, and then there's many people that don't even have the internal monologue. So can you imagine if you don't speak to yourselves? One thing is speaking to yourself, I'm going to go to the gym, and then when I've gone to the gym I'm going to go home and I'm going to have something to eat or whatever. That's a monologue. A dialogue would be, but don't you have some work to do, or shouldn't you be doing this, or shouldn't you be finishing off those books? And then you go, well, I could finish the books whilst I'm out sunbathing or something like that. And so the dialogue it presents you choices, and so then you choose because you think about your life, whereas a monologue, that doesn't give you the choice. It's just a voice in your head. I'm going to the gym, I'm going to make a video, I'm going to go back home. And no voice ever says, well, why don't you cut through here? Why don't you just go, I know, let's go to the supermarket. Should I? Well, it's going to take this long. We start to debate. We have debates with ourselves, people, when we have an internal dialogue. And this, was very revealing for me, because I realised all these years I've been banging on at people saying, don't you get it? Fucking hell, I'm just saying this, I'm just saying that, I'm just thinking this, I'm thinking that. Surely you think the same, don't you? There must be loads of you think the same, but then I'd never get anything back. And still to this day, very, very seldom do I get anything back. And so thinking people are very, very rare. They really are. And when we listen to documentaries about scientists, for instance, who thought in very unusual ways, be interesting to see whether they had a monologue or a dialogue. I would think that any thinking person has to have a dialogue, because you've got to be able to ask yourselves questions. You've got to be able to debate with yourselves. You've got to be able to try to prove yourselves wrong. You really have to have this ability. Otherwise, you just don't ever question anything. And how many times in my life have I asked people questions and they're like, ooh, now you've got me. Ooh, I'll have to think about that. Or think about it in your fucking dreams. You can't think. Look, if you ask a person something pretty well mundane, what's going to happen to you when you die? If you're asking an 80-year-old person, and it's kind of like, you go, no way. No fucking way. You're 80 years old and never asked yourself that question. You're a fucking tard. You're a fucking tard. And 99% of the fucking populace are tards, people. And, why aren't people speaking about death when they're on their fucking deathbed? I know there's a cut-off valve that just sends people fucking senile, turns them into blubbering fucking bags of shit. And they don't think about these things, maybe because it's a protection mechanism to prevent them from suffering. But if there's any reality to this religion about you've got to be saved by Jesus or some fucker, then I would have thought that 70 or 80 years old was the prime time to be doing that. And so you would have thought something in your head would have said to you, hey, isn't it about time you level yourself with the Lord? You're going to go to hell if you don't believe right. You better read that fucking book. And then you say to yourself, what book's that then? The Bible, you fucking idiot. Oh, that book? Oh, well, I've heard about it. Well, yeah, I suppose you're right. How long have I got left? It could be any day, you tard. You're 80 fucking years old. Walk around the graveyards. People have been dying since fucking 3 years old, 2 years old. They just die. People just die all over the place. What's wrong with you? Never given it any thought. Very, very fucking weird, the human being is, people. And this whole experience is fucking weird. And so, in the last few days, again, I've been listening to a lot of profound scientific programs speaking about the personalities and the traits and the geniuses that came up with all these different sorts of things. The human beings that are one in a gazillion, a very, very special people that just tell us something about the cosmos. And these people, of course, they're not comprehended by anybody save less than a handful of the very own people, let's say quantum physicists or something. Because when people come up with these ideas, because they're new, everybody throws up their hands and they get angry and they spit venom and they don't want to listen to this and don't want to listen to that. And then it turns out that 5 or 10 years or 20 years or 50 years later, they were perfectly right. They were just ahead of their time. And, these geniuses are, of course, always ahead of their time. That's why they're called geniuses. So yeah, the spectrum of consciousness is vast, and whenever we listen to these genius people, we hear that they got their PhD at fucking 15 years old, and they were professors at 19 years old, and they're prodigies. They're just super 1,000 times more, 1,000,000 times more intellectual than most pink apes. And so where do they get that from? Then when we start looking into, they never got that information in one lifetime. They couldn't possibly be so genius. Where did that come from? They never learnt it. And it wasn't inherited by their parents or their grandparents. Where did it come from? And then you go, well, it's the old reincarnation of spirits, old souls, and all that sort of thing. And then the world gets very, very curious again, doesn't it? The world is curious, people. It's so fucking curious. And it's inevitable that all this stuff is going to be revealed, and it's going to be absolutely terrifying for the whole world to make so many realizations that what we think is going on here isn't anything remotely like what is actually going on. Once they start to get their heads around the fact that it is all illusion, it is all Maya, there is no physical matter here. And you can listen to very modern people like Jim Calalini, or whatever his name is, the bold theoretical physicist, and he's got these great YouTube videos speaking about quantum physics and the nature of atoms, and he's telling us all the time there's no fucking physical matter. We've known this for over 100 years. Where do you go from there? And then people say that, you're not real, it's just a spiritual cosmic dream and all this sort of stuff. And of course I've been over it and over it and over it and over it. But, people don't have ears for it. They just don't have ears for it. They have muffs on. And you know, in some of my videos when I'm speaking about this deep esoteric stuff, then the odd person will go, wow, that was a brilliant video, best video I've watched in a long time. And it's kind of like, well, you know, they're a receiver. They are, you know, another old soul that's, you know, open to this cosmic vibratory soup, and I don't know, they're on a reconnaissance mission or something like that, and they benefit and receive from these informations. And the Jewish Kabbalists, they speak about, we're here gathering sparks, we're gathering holy sparks, and these sparks are like Pac-Man things, you know, gobble, gobble, gobble. We're going through our life, some of us who are evolved, we are gathering up all these sparks because we're going to a higher level in the game, whereas the vast majority, they are NPCs. They really are. They serve no purpose, just to fill in the gaps and make this experience for us, highly evolved creatures, a little bit more interesting. Yeah.